Coffee is more than just a drink. For many, it's a ritual, a way to start the day, or even a reason to take a break from work. But how did this humble drink, which is consumed by millions every single day, come to be? The story of coffee is filled with adventure, mystery, and cultural evolution. So, let's take a journey through time to explore the history of coffee, from the moment the first bean was discovered to the way we brew it today. The history of coffee begins with its discovery, and many believe it started in Ethiopia, possibly as far back as the 9th century. The legend goes that a goat herder named Kaldi was wandering with his goats when he noticed that they seemed particularly energetic after eating the berries from a certain plant. Curious, Kaldi tried the berries himself and experienced the same burst of energy. The plant he discovered was, in fact, the coffee plant, and he shared his discovery with a local monk. The monk made a drink from the berries, and soon, others in the area began using the plant for its stimulating effects. However, it wasn't until much later that coffee began to be used in the form we know today. Coffee plants spread from Ethiopia to the Arabian Peninsula, where they were cultivated and processed into the drink we recognize. The Arabian Peninsula, particularly the region known today as Yemen, became the center of the coffee trade by the 15th century. Coffee was grown in Yemen, roasted, and then ground into a fine powder to be mixed with hot water. This drink was popular among the local Sufi monks, who used it to stay awake during their long hours of prayer and meditation. It was in the Middle East that the coffee plant first started to gain recognition outside of its native regions. By the 16th century, coffee had spread to the major cities of the Islamic world, including Mecca, Damascus, and Cairo. Coffee houses, or kahvekhana, began to pop up in these cities. These were places not only for people to drink coffee, but also to socialize, debate, play chess, and listen to music. The coffee house quickly became a place of cultural exchange, where news, art, and intellectual ideas were shared. In Europe, the story of coffee takes a dramatic turn. Coffee was first introduced to the continent in the 17th century, and it was initially met with skepticism. In Venice, coffee was sold in shops, but the first recorded coffeehouse in Europe was opened in London in 1652 by a man named Pasqua Ricci. The shop, called the Turk's Head, served as a gathering place for intellectuals and became a hub for conversation and debate. By the late 1600s, coffee had made its way to France, where it gained popularity among the aristocracy. The French king, Louis XIV, even received coffee plants as a gift from the Dutch. He attempted to cultivate the plants in the royal gardens, but it wasn't until the French began cultivating coffee in their colonies in the Caribbean and South America that coffee production truly took off. Meanwhile, the Dutch played an important role in the spread of coffee across Europe and beyond. They were the first Europeans to successfully cultivate coffee in colonial areas like Java, in modern-day Indonesia. The Dutch planted coffee in their colonies and began trading the beans across the globe, making coffee an international commodity. But it wasn't just the Dutch who were involved in the coffee trade. Other European powers, including the French, Spanish, and Portuguese, all became involved in the cultivation and trade of coffee. The French planted coffee in their Caribbean colonies, the Portuguese introduced coffee to Brazil, and the Spanish brought coffee to Central America. Brazil would eventually become the dominant force in the global coffee trade. By the early 19th century, Brazil was producing vast amounts of coffee, and its influence on the world's coffee market only grew as the country expanded its plantations. Coffee was now a cash crop in many parts of the world, and it was fueling economies and shaping global trade. In fact, by the mid-19th century, coffee had become the second most traded commodity in the world, behind only oil. Throughout this period, coffee continued to evolve in its preparation. In the 19th century, new methods for brewing coffee were developed. In France, the invention of the drip brewing method, using a metal filter, revolutionized how coffee was made. The French press, as it is known today, was patented in 1852, although the design has since been refined. The late 19th and early 20th centuries also saw the rise of coffee brands and commercial coffee production. Instant coffee, a game changer for convenience, was invented in 1901 by a man named Satoru Kato in Japan. Instant coffee quickly became popular, especially among soldiers during wartime, as it was easy to prepare and transport. By the mid-20th century, instant coffee was a staple in homes around the world. At the same time, coffee houses continued to grow in importance. In the United States, coffee houses began to spring up in major cities, and coffee drinking became an important part of the daily routine for many people. In the 1950s and 1960 seconds, coffee became associated with the American middle class, and brands like Folgers and Maxwell House became household names. The next chapter in coffee history came in the late 20th century with the rise of specialty coffee shops. In the 1970s and 1980 seconds, coffee culture in the United States began to shift. Instead of just having a quick cup of coffee at home or in a diner, people started to seek out high-quality coffee made with freshly roasted beans. This shift was driven by a growing interest in the origins of coffee and the growing awareness of the quality of coffee beans. One of the biggest influences on this movement was Starbucks. Starbucks, founded in 1971 in Seattle, began as a small shop that sold high-quality coffee beans and equipment. However, in the 1980s, under the leadership of Howard Schultz, Starbucks transformed into a coffeehouse chain that focused on espresso-based drinks, creating the modern coffeehouse experience that we know today. By the 1990s, Starbucks had become an international phenomenon, and coffeehouses everywhere began to embrace the specialty coffee movement. Around the same time, there was a growing awareness of the environmental and social impacts of coffee production. Many coffee drinkers began to ask questions about where their coffee came from and how it was produced. This led to the rise of fair trade coffee, which sought to ensure that coffee farmers received a fair price for their crops and worked in better conditions. Today, coffee is a global industry, with millions of people involved in every step of the coffee supply chain. From the farmers who grow the coffee beans to the roasters, distributors, and baristas who prepare the drinks, coffee is a product that involves many hands before it reaches your cup. The world of coffee has become incredibly diverse, with a wide range of brewing methods, from pour-over and espresso to French press and cold brew. There are countless varieties of beans, each with its own unique flavor profile, and coffee lovers can now find beans from all over the world, each with its own distinct taste. Technology has also played a huge role in the evolution of coffee. In recent years, innovations in brewing equipment, such as high-end espresso machines, grinders, and even smart coffee makers, have given coffee drinkers more control over the brewing process. At the same time, new methods of coffee consumption, like ready-to-drink coffee beverages and coffee pods, have made it easier than ever to enjoy a cup of coffee, no matter how busy you are. As coffee culture continues to evolve, the drink has also become a symbol of community and creativity. Coffee shops are no longer just places to grab a quick cup, they're spaces for people to gather, work, relax, and connect. The coffee industry has also become a space for baristas to showcase their skills, with competitions and events like the World Barista Championship drawing attention to the artistry involved in brewing the perfect cup of coffee. From its origins in ancient Ethiopia to its global dominance today, coffee has traveled a long way. It has shaped cultures, fueled revolutions, and brought people together in countless ways. But one thing has remained constant: the love for a good cup of coffee. Whether you prefer it black, with milk, or as a fancy espresso drink, coffee has become an integral part of daily life for people all around the world. As we sip our morning cup of coffee, it's worth remembering the long and fascinating history behind every bean. From the discovery of the coffee plant to the development of brewing methods and the rise of coffee culture, the journey of coffee is a story of exploration, innovation, and, of course, a little bit of magic in every cup. If you've enjoyed this journey through coffee's history, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because great stories, like great coffee, are better when shared.